How's it going, my truant people? DrSlaking, the Slacking Doctor, back with the draft analysis for your Cotswold Whimsicots in season... Shit, I should look this up. Season 7, I think, of Egg. We've been around since season 1 of Egg, I'm pretty sure. Back when Mid was in charge, he kindly invited us to it. I think I lost to A-Drive that season, and possibly that's when I got 6-0'd by an Executor. So I try not to remember that season. Not that losing to A-Drive is a shame or anything, but that was the biggest in terms of viewership Draft League battle I ever participated in, and I lost. So yeah, try to forget that, and the Executor bit, really try to forget that. Anyway, the point is, Egg is like just one of my favorite leagues. Throughout like my time playing Pokemon, there's been leagues that I felt are kind of like home leagues for me, and Egg is definitely one of those. UBL used to be one of those, so on and so forth. Just leagues that I felt like I was in a lot of the seasons, really felt comfortable, felt like I knew all the faces there, and yeah, Egg is definitely one of those for me. So really happy to be back. Really happy to be invited back. Thank you to D-Ray and the other admins for inviting us back. Now, having said that, I upset some of the admins. I was pick 3 overall and was immediately before OG Albina and D-Ray and picked Latios, sniping Owen, causing Owen to snipe D-Ray. So I kind of chained a little bit there, and from that point on continued to snipe quite a lot of people as the draft went on. So probably not getting invited back next season, but you know, you win some, you lose some, don't you? Hopefully we just win it this time, and then we don't need to come back. We're fine. Leave on a high. Anyway. So yeah, we had 3rd pick overall. I picked up Latios. I know people are going crazy about Latios right now. I know it's super in demand. People are really high on it. It was, I think, in the top price bracket or top price, cost the most amount of points you could spend in this season. I should say, check out all the other coaches, link down below, by the way. Fantastic lineup this season. Really excited for it. But yeah, let me focus. I think this was top points. I'm not convinced yet that Latios is like a top mon in the format. I could have picked up like Garchomp and some other things that I think, could maybe be better. I'm unsure. But at the same time, like, I wanted to try this. I've had Latios in Gen 8. Didn't really love it. So I wanted to try it in Gen 9. I've used it a bit on the ladder just to test it out, and I thought it was pretty good. Flip Turn's a nice addition. The Luster Purge buff is pretty nice. So yeah, we picked up round 1 Latios. You can't go wrong. Good speed tier. Good offense, good special, sweeper or wall breaker. So pretty happy with Latios, and funny that I sniped a lot of people, and a good pivot nowadays as well. Round 2, we picked up Sneasler to go with it. Reason being, this is a pretty hard thing to check now with, like, say a Psychic type. Say you want to build a Psychic type to switch in on the Luster Purge from Latios, like say you've got like a Reuniclus or something. You're probably going to want to build that Fizz-Def to switch in on Sneasler. So you're probably not going to switch in on Dracometeus, for example. So it kind of pressures Psychic types in that way. I should explain, the way I learned to play Draft, I had a brilliant front office that used to help me. I still have them, I just don't turn to them as much as I should. But there was a player, Checkmate Ben, some of you will know him, incredible player, really lovely guy as well. He taught me the way that I learned to play Draft was, when you're drafting an offensive team, it's good to pressure on certain weak points or to create certain weak points. So, for example, the example he used back in the day was if you draft Zygarde round 1, Zygarde tends to pressure bulky grasses because it spams 1,000 arrows and flying types can't switch in. Bug types don't tend to be very good defensively. So the main ground resist that's going to come in on you is grass types, right? Maybe fairies, but those two. So he was like, if you pick something that then hits grass types on the special side, like, for example, give me a special water type, I don't know, Inteleon, say you were trying to save some points, or Greninja. Greninja would be a good example from that generation. Then now, if their fairy type wants to come in on the Dark Pulse, they're going to struggle because they're going to have to build Fizz-Def for the 1,000 arrows. If their grass type wants to come in on 1,000 arrows, they're going to struggle because they're going to have to build Spadef for the Hydro Pump. So what you do is you pick Pokemon that pressure the same defensive spines on different sides, and it makes their building very hard. And then if one breaks, the other can sweep. If the one check is removed for one, then the other can go crazy, right? And Sneasler and Latios do that really well. In other words, it's the start of a Psychic Dark Fighting core, which is one of the kind of main draft league cores, right? So these two together, I thought, give me great speed tiers, give me great offense, really pressure things together and suit that offensive synergy that I've always learned to kind of play draft around. Now, that's how I learned to play draft. And the way I used to play draft was I would draft things that could form defensive cores like that, and then I would draft things that could switch in on their revenge killers. So, for example, if I pick Sneasler, something that might switch in on it is fast Psychic types like Alakazam, right? Or might Revenge Kill it, sorry, would be something like Fast Psychic types like Alakazam. So I would pick something like, I don't know, a Corviknight that could then switch in on the Alakazam. That's how I used to play it. My problem with Gen 9 is I think this metagame is too offensively strong and fast-paced to reliably draft a lot of switch-ins to the main like Revenge Killers. For example, if you try switching in your Corviknight on certain Paradox Pokemon, they might just start boosting up while you're doing that. Like, I don't know, Iron Valiant, right? Iron Valiant can come in on Sneasler, click its booster energy if I've not got my Unburden, click its booster energy, or get its booster energy, outspeed me, kill me with a Psyshock. If I try switching into Corviknight, that thing can calm mind up and then start T-bolting through me, and it's a problem. So with this generation, I just don't think it's as viable as it used to be to draft that way. So now, rather than drafting defensive switch-ins so much to Revenge Killers, I just draft a lot of offense, a lot of setup threats, a lot of pressure. I don't draft as much momentum as I used to. I used to really like the slow momentum, things like Rotom-Wash, Corviknight that could come in, take hit, and get out. Don't draft as much as that as I used to, and you'll see as this draft goes on. So round 3, picked up Kingambit to finish off that Dark Psychic Fighting core. Again, this thing now, proper good fairy killer and psychic killer for the first 2. So 2 types that they maybe struggle with a little bit in terms of Latios struggling with the fairies, Sneasler struggling with the psychics. This thing kills both of them. So with Iron Head, Kowtow Cleave, whatever, another setup threat with Swords Dance, Hazard Setter if I want to use it that way. Of course, Supreme Overlord, meaning that playing an offensive playing style actually boosts this thing's damage output in the late game, suits the way that I'm trying to play more this gen. So just felt like a perfect pick. Been wanting to use it all gen, really happy I used it. My backup was to take Terra Bisharp later on, which would have been cool too, but obviously a little bit different. Really psyched to use this thing. I think this thing's awesome. Round 4, picked up Manaphy. So this thing does cover some of the weaknesses with a good bulky switch-in, but not a bulky defensive pivot switch-in. So, for example, the Ice-type weakness, the Fire-type weakness from Latios and Kingambit respectively, I could go into this thing on both of them and maintain offensive pressure. I don't have to try and slow Volt Switch or U-turn out. I can just start going to town and attacking again. So, still covers some defensive synergy whilst keeping the offense up. And obviously this thing doesn't super pair offensive synergistic wise with anything we have there. Synergistic, I don't think that's a real word, but like it pressures what bulky waters to run Spadef, bulky grasses maybe to run Spadef, bulky dragons maybe to run Spadef. Nothing on my team really is taking advantage of that yet, but that's something we can pick up later on. Going into round 5, pick up Gliscor. I wanted some hazards. Like you need hazards on this team. I wanted a secondary ground immunity, and this thing, a flying type obviously, this thing just does so much. Like, obviously it's one of the best spikes around at the minute. I heard a lot of people kind of saying that they're not convinced that Gliscor is good in Draft League, or as good in Draft League as it is in OU, and I don't doubt that. But that doesn't mean that it's bad in Draft League. I think it losing Roost means it's not the same Pokemon it used to be in Draft League. But I think on an offense team, when you can do things like, hey, I could run like Swords Dance Facade, I'm pretty sure, or I can just run like hazard stacking sets, like it can fit on kind of a more HO style draft really, really well. So I think, and I'm theorizing, I haven't tried any of these things. All of these mons so far are new to me, so in this gen at least. So, but I think this makes sense. I don't know. I think it does. I think it works. Round 6, pick up Galarian Weezing. So I'd kind of hoped to get Rillaboom on this team, but I left it too late. I think I'd planned to pick it up this pick, which is like round 6 is late, but I wasn't really sure how much people valued Rillaboom, especially if they didn't have a Sneasler or Halucha or anything like that themselves. But I think Dell picked it up with Heatran, if I remember right. So that makes sense. But yeah, I still wanted to have the option of going with an Unburdened Sneasler set. I don't have to do that. Like, I can run this thing Levitate, I can run this thing Neutralizing Gas. It's still a really good mon. I can run it with T-Spikes, which is really useful on offense. So this is probably like the most defensive piece on the team. But I don't think it has to be played defensively. Like I say, you can just get your hazards up and let it go down, run a Rocky Helmet, Pain Split, wear things down as well. I'm pretty sure it gets access to Taunt, so I can use it as a deterrent, stop things setting up or setting up their own hazards. So, you know, Weezing, it has utility. It's not just a wall, which I tend to think is bad this gen. So, and like I say, it gives me that misty terrain if I ever want to run Unburdened Sneasler. Going into round 7, Picked up a Terra Captain low kicks. I should give a big shout out to Addison here, who helped me with this draft a little bit. I just kept running ideas past her, and most of the time she was like, that sounds sick. One of them I hit her up was like, is Terra low kicks good? And she was like, Terra low kicks is crazy. Like, you should 100% pick that thing up. So I wasn't entirely sure. In terms of the offensive synergy we mentioned earlier, one of the other types that likes coming in on Latios is steel types, right? Well, now they're being pressured on the physical side as well. Do we run physical steel to switch in on low kicks? Do we run special steel to switch in on Latios? So again, just making those defensive backbones of my opponent's teams really torn between what they're going to do. And if this thing removes a steel type, if it removes a fairy type, which also might want to run Fizz Def for it, then hey, maybe Latios can more freely drop its Draco Meteors, maybe it can more freely spam other moves. I just think it fits quite well on this team. So also can come in on those psychic types of Sneasel, which is nice, along with Kingambit. So I have Double Dark, which I don't think is a problem. I think Kingambit's the kind of thing you probably want late game. This is the kind of thing you probably lose early game. So it's okay to throw this thing out early, wall break, and know that you're not going to lose to like a mono stored power, a Spathra or a Uniplus or something like that. So I think it's fine to have Double Dark. Again, I wasn't too worried about having like overwhelming weaknesses on this team, because my plan is to kill my opponent before they have chances to really exploit gaps in my defensive spine, because there isn't much of one, right? Yeah, that was my kind of thinking. So yeah, shout out to Addison for recommending this pick. I really hope this thing can pop off. I'm not convinced by it, I'll be honest, but she swore by it, so let's see. I'm excited to give it a try. Round 8, Electrode, Hisuian Electrode. I used this thing in PPL D-League. It was fantastic. I had it with Terra there, but I never felt like it needed Terra. Maybe I'm alone in this, but like I had like Terra Ice option on it, Terra Electric, Terra Fairy, and there was times where I was like running Terra Blast Ice, and I thought, you know, this could have just been Leaf Storm and it would have been fine. So for an amazing speed tier, for some amazing support with like fast taunt and stuff like that, this thing's really good. I don't know, I really loved it in D-League, and the potential like U-turn momentum here with, say, Volt switching on incoming grass types into something like the low kicks, and then hitting that like banded Terra U-turn, for example, as they switch out, and like just keeping up momentum, going into this thing on potential incoming steel type with it resisting steel, and then Volt switching out again. I could see an easy like momentum vortex forming with those two picks, so I thought they paired quite nicely. And like I said, the speed tier just too good to turn down. So I was actually thinking about, before I took low kicks as my Terra Captain, I was thinking about taking just regular Electrode as my Terra Captain, because I think the elite speed tier is just so important this gen. I was someone that used to just, my teams would top out at like, say, Keldeo at 108, and then kind of Whimsicott 116, which a lot of people don't speed creep anyway. But this gen, I think speed is so much more crucial. So really, really happy to have this on the draft. Going to round 9, I mentioned that Manaphy earlier on and pairing something with it. Well, we picked up the Ceruledge. So I knew all along that I wanted a physical fire type. I was looking at maybe Hisuian Arcanine, which I think D-Ray sniped. I'm not sure I would have picked it anyway, but I was looking at it. I was looking at like maybe Entei, just because I love Entei and I'd love to see it like on Wi-Fi. But in the end, this thing was definitely the best pickup. Gives me a spin blocker with the ghost typing, obviously, which on a hazard team or on an offense team is really, really important to keep hazards up. Gives me a physical fire type, which means those water types we mentioned, if they want to run Spadef and Manaphy, then they're probably going to get broken down by Ceruledge. And I had this thing very briefly, I think in BBR at the start of the gen. I think I joined as a replacement coach, had Ceruledge and dropped it after like one game, and it put in work in that one game. And I think I'd already, or I think I misplayed it, though I would have put in work. And I think I'd already made the trades to drop it before that match. I couldn't reverse them. So this is my like redemption arc for Ceruledge. I really want to try it again. I think it fits my playstyle. I think it's so interesting. Strong priority is really important, between Sucker Punch on Kingambit, first impression of Sucker Punch on low kicks, and now this thing, we have a few really, really good priority users. So yeah, I'm hoping this thing could do some cool stuff. And then moving into the last pick of the draft, we could have between 9 and 11 Pokemon, I think. Usually I would have tried to target 9, because I just think my philosophy with drafting now in terms of points is you can only use 6 Pokemon's worth of points in any battle. So the more points you leave on the bench every week, the worse the team you're bringing to the battle is every week. And I think that is more relevant than ever in this gen, when the top mons, in my opinion, should just be banned. Like, I think the top 3 like point tiers in most leagues, just take them off the board. Like, I think they're broken, and I think you'd get a much more balanced meta game. We'd be able to see more defensive spines working again. It would encourage a more varied selection of play styles and whatever. But I'm getting off topic. Because the gen is the way the gen is, I think get as top heavy as you can. But it just so happened that we had enough points left after Ceruledge to pick up another mon that I think is pretty good, actually, in Lycanroc. Now, I say it's pretty good. I think it's pretty bad most of the time. I think people still think this mon's kind of bad in Draft League because since it was released, it has been bad in Draft League. I've seen people try and use it on Sand. It was never that great. And outside of Sand, it basically gets no usage, apart from in low tier leagues. And I understand why. But in this generation, I think it's interesting. It's fast. It has Taunt. It has Hazards. So you can run like Sash Leads. You can run setup variants with Swords Dance. You can run a bunch of different things that I think are interesting. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. But I think this thing is like got unexplored potential in this generation. It was the final pick. My team already looked pretty well rounded. And I wanted an actual flying resist because Kingambit is a flying resist. But if you think about Staraptor, Braviary, Tornadus, most of the good offensive flying types in this gen, they all have fighting coverage. And then I have Electrode to kill the flying types, but it doesn't switch in. It's not essential, but at least, and this thing also drops to a CC, by the way, but at least it's quick, right? So, for example, if you bring Heavy Duty Boots Staraptor or Braviary, and you click Brave Bird as this thing comes in, you can't stay in and click Close Combat like you could on a Kingambit. So that's my kind of stance. Like I think it just gives me something that forces a little bit of different prep from offensive flying types, and it gives me a little bit of utility on the team. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm right. I could be totally wrong. I could be dropping this thing by week 4 for all I know, but I'm interested in it. I'm intrigued by it. I also think the Midnight Lycanroc, for similar reasons, could be interesting with Sucker Punch, potential Terror. I don't know. I think that thing could be interesting for a low point pick, but I'm probably in the minority there. Regardless, I'll leave it off here. Let me know what you guys think of this team down in the comments below. I think this is, on paper, the best team I have drafted this gen so far, but only time will tell. I do have another draft analysis going up later today that is very, very different. So if you want to see a completely different style of draft analysis from me, be sure to subscribe and do all the YouTube-y things that YouTube-y people do. And yeah, we've got another draft analysis going up later with a very different style, so that should be fun. Anyway, like I say, I think this is the best team I've had all generation. Hopefully that proves to be true and I don't end up hating it. We'll see. Thank you so much for loafing around with me, and I'll catch you again next time.